You are listening to the Break Time Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Neo4j, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. I realized there are a lot of acronyms in this episode's title. I feel like maybe I should win some kind of buzzword bingo or something. Anyway, I just got back from a couple of events last week, and this week I poured time into several other projects, which I will be sharing with you now, as well as in some upcoming episodes. I'm really excited about all the learning and content that I have scheduled, so let's dive in. The first thing I noticed last week is that Spring AI updated to a new milestone release. So they're now on a milestone 7 release. And there were a couple of shifts here, but really the changes weren't all that drastic. The first thing is that the dependency names of some of the packages shifted just a little bit, especially for model and vector store starters. So just to be aware, if you update to the M7 Spring AI release, you'll need to update some of the package names and group IDs and such for your dependencies. This I noticed especially true for the vector store for Pinecone and Neo4j, as well as the model that I was using, which was at the time OpenAI. And I noticed that the starter term in the package name just moved earlier into the package naming, if you will. This aligns actually much better with some of the other Spring framework dependency name structures. A lot of their projects are similarly named with the dependencies, and so now this really aligns much better with some of the other Spring dependencies. But just so you know, that will be a breaking change. You'll have to go in and update dependency package names and such. The next thing that I was really excited has been updated is the Pinecone configuration. It is way easier now. I had mentioned a couple episodes back that it was really a hassle to figure out because Pinecone shifted the way that they connect to database instances on their end, and that made configuring it in a Spring AI application a little bit tricky to understand where the project ID and the environment and all those different pieces were in the now what's called the host name on Pinecone. But now Spring AI aligns much better with what Pinecone is looking for. And now you only have to provide the API key and the index that you're going to be searching, and it handles the rest of it. So much, much easier. That is going to be a breaking change though. If you had the project ID and the environment configured and written in like a bean, for instance, those methods for project ID and environment are no longer there, no longer valid. That will pop up and say, hey, you need to update this. But that really is the only thing that's impacted. And again, I feel like this is a way better, much more efficient and streamlined approach and matches much better with what's in Pinecone. So I was super excited to see this update. The next thing that I came across, which isn't so much of a Spring AI thing as just something that I found out that happened to coincide with the Spring AI milestone 7 release, is that I was presenting it some stuff last week and updated my application to the M7 release and realized I was having trouble connecting to Pinecone. I thought this was a little odd. They have a Pinecone IO on the end. So I thought, well, maybe it's something blocking like .io URLs or something, but I could access Neo4j just fine, which Neo4j is also a .io. So I was like, well, they're not completely blocking that. And come to find out, I was working at a customer site for the afternoon and then presenting there later on, and they block Gen AI related or AI related URLs. So a lot of the like access points and APIs and things like that are just completely blocked on their Wi-Fi network. So it was the Wi-Fi network causing the issue there, but they're a customer of Neo4j. So I'm sure that's why I was able to access Neo4j's without any issue. And then just they blocked Pinecone's vector store for some odd, strange reason. I ended up connecting to my hotspot on my cell phone and was able to have no problem besides just being a little bit slower. But that worked great. Now I had the flip thing happen. A day or two later, I was updating my applications and running them and testing them before I pushed some updates to GitHub. And I was at the airport doing this, and I had the opposite problem occur where I could access Pinecone.io just fine, but I could not access Neo4j's console, the .io again. So I thought, well, this is really odd. Maybe they happen to be a Pinecone customer or something and not Neo4j. But an airport Wi-Fi, of all things, was blocking Neo4j's cloud database service and not Pinecone's. Again, I just updated to using my hotspot for a few minutes to test it out, make sure everything worked, and then push that up to GitHub. No problems after that. But just something you might want to be aware of, that I initially had a mild panic attack when I did this the first time, that it was something in Spring AI had broken the pinecone configuration and connection to the database. And I thought I was going to have to do something else and rework my demo and so on. But ended up, it was not Spring at all. It was actually the Wi-Fi blocking those certain sites. So just to be aware, if you have problems with that, you may need to find another connection network or run something locally. But it was kind of funny the way this all kind of coincided. I thought it was a little bit unusual to come across one website being blocked at a customer site, for instance, and not the other, and then vice versa at an airport. Strange things. But as far as the Spring AI release, the upgrade was very, very seamless. Outside of the dependency and configuration breaking changes, if you will, it took me less than 30 minutes to upgrade the entire application. I was super excited about this. That is the way to do an upgrade. If you're going to introduce some breaking changes, make them very minor and relatively small, and then much fewer things that you have to change. So the only things I had to update were the dependencies and the configurations. Everything else pretty much stayed the same. So that was awesome. I really loved that experience. The next thing I want to chat about is that Nodes 2025 was announced last week as well. There's a blog post out about it. Nodes is a Neo4j's online developer conference. It is all free, all online, and all day, about 24 hours, maybe a little over, of content, technical talks, and code. There's lots of tracks again this year for a variety of different topics. And of course, you'll hear about the latest things going on in the graph and general technology world. The CFP is also open, so we are now accepting abstracts to submit for conference presentations. That will be open until June 15th. If you're interested in speaking about something graph related, again, we open this up to the general graph community. It'll be customers and community and partners and all sorts of really interesting things, people doing cool things with tools and technologies and concepts and data sets and visualizations and all sorts of neat stuff. Whether I present or just attend, I will definitely be there. I would love to see you there. This is one of my favorite events every year. There's just so much opportunity for inspiration and motivation to really dig into some really cool topics and things that I might not have thought of before from all these amazing people around the world. And again, speakers are fantastic. Their content's fantastic. And no matter whether I speak or just attend, I will be there and soaking it all in. So come join me. The next thing that I worked on is Graph Academy Java application course. There's an upcoming one that my colleague and I are working on. We have an existing one that's a full app development course. If you're not familiar, I guess I'll back up a little bit. Graph Academy, Neo4j Graph Academy hosts Neo4j related courses that are free and self-paced on a variety of different topics. And we have a current Java application course that builds a full app with Java and Neo4j. But we wanted to take a step back from this and tease apart some of the basic foundational concepts for working with the Java driver. So we're looking at how to interact with Neo4j using just the Java driver and the connection to the database, how to run queries, how to handle the results, and really just sticking with kind of the foundational concepts there, and then use that as a springboard to dive into the fuller application course at a later date. I'll talk more about this in a future post. I don't want to give too many details away. There's still a lot of things we're working out and dealing with, but this is upcoming. I hope that will be super exciting for those of you in the Java space who just want to get an introductory start with Neo4j. Then the last piece that I worked on this week was a new blog post on the Introduction to Retrieval Augmented Generation, Part 1. There will be at least a Part 2, possibly more, but at least Part 1 and 2, and I got the Part 1 published this week. I'd had some feedback on some of my presentations about how helpful it was to understand some of the foundational concepts and terms being tossed around in the generative AI and AI spaces. And so I put some of these general concepts that I've been presenting at some of my talks for a while now. I put these into a blog format. This Part 1 covers a little bit on just what is retrieval augmented generation, talks a little bit about large language models and how they work, vectors and vector similarity search, and general topics. And then there will be a Part 2 blog post coming up that I hope to cover vector RAG, graph RAG, and agents, possibly some other things too, but at least we'll start with those. I was super excited to get this out, set the groundwork for some of the things that are being tossed around and maybe some challenging concepts that not many of us understand really and fully very well. And I really feel like understanding these foundational concepts helps build a better structure on top of that for putting together really well architected and designed systems, because you're understanding the basic building blocks that go into that. So this was part 1. It's out on my website now. And again, I hope to have a part 2 coming soon. The last piece of content I want to cover for this week is I came across an article from a colleague of mine, Marcus Isla, who wrote The Power of Relationships, Neo4j, Quarkus, and Intelligent Applications. I really loved this introduction to so many of these concepts. It talks a little bit about graphs, which use cases they shine over things like relational databases, then how knowledge graphs overall can contribute to the AI and generative AI spaces. Talks a little bit about what is Quarkus and the benefits for applications, plus the fact that Quarkus has a great LangChain4j integration available as well. And then actually walks through building a sample recommendations application using Quarkus and Neo4j to present the code here and give you a springboard for tacking on LangChain4j or Kubernetes or whatever you might be wanting to plug into past that point. But I've been wanting to play with Quarkus now for a while, and this is just another encouragement to bump it up on the list just a little bit. I really enjoyed this article, and I hope you do as well. This week has been a busy week catching up on things in my backlog. Spring AI upgraded to a new milestone release, which was a cinch to migrate. Nodes 2025 was announced last week as well, along with the CFPs. I published a part 1 blog post on an introduction to retrieval augmented generation, part 2 forthcoming. And I worked on an upcoming Graph Academy course for Java and Neo4j. I'm hoping the next few weeks continue this trend and plan to bring you all along for the ride. As always, thanks for listening and happy coding.